Welcome to the Artificial Future Podcast. This is our weekly AI podcast, and I'm Pete Gruber. This week, what made the headlines with AI was a new development called Sora, S-O-R-A. One of the more unsettling things about AI is how blisteringly fast the technology develops. A few months ago, it seemed like useful AI generated video tools were still out of reach. Well, now that's over. OpenAI just released the new text to video generator called Sora. And that's what that image behind me is about. I asked AI, give us a representation of Sora. And as you can see, there's a huge audience watching what appears to be a bunch of colors floating in the middle of the room, almost like holograms. What Sora is able to do is generate complex scenes with multiple characters, specific types of motion, and accurate details of the subject and background. The model understands not only what the user has asked for in the prompt, but also how those things exist in the physical world. And we're going to try to bring up some of those examples for you, and you've probably seen some of them, but we'll talk about the amount of detail in some of these. The one that's most notable for me, there we go. We're on their website now, and we're hoping that we're going to be able to actually play a video. The one I like the best, Jesse, is the one of the woolly mammoth walking in snow. Oh, let's do this one first then. We have we have an Asian model walking on the streets somewhere in Asia, Tokyo perhaps. And there we go. Now, bear in mind, these things are extinct. They don't exist anymore. So, modeling something like this would have to be done from museum pieces and specs, archaeological digs. But the amount of realism is just staggering. And again, this is AI, 100%. Backdrop, the animals in motion. There's another one that I enjoyed, which was an Italian woman cooking some pasta. And I guess we're going to do this one first. Yeah, there we go.
Well, I'm just clicking through them. We can go to whichever one I find out we were talking about. This is the one that's most realistic, in my opinion, where it asks for the gold rush.
Oh, yeah, this was a period piece.
It asked for footage from the 1800s, what it would look like.
1842, I think, or something like that. Yeah. And this is the sort of thing that you would expect Hollywood to be able to do. And here we are having AI generated within seconds.
Wait a minute, I didn't notice.
Would you notice something 21st
right
century?
Here, see, right here.
What's that, a satellite dish?
Well, what that is.
That always annoys the studio execs when the movie's released and they realize, oh my God, this was a period piece from World War I and we got a TV antenna on one of the roofs. Are we going to get rid of that? All right, so anyway, this is, this article that I have here for you says, here's how Sora's videos are going to exist in the world in the weirdest and most uncanny ways imaginable. For now, they say, this OpenAI capability is running final tests on Sora to make sure that it's ready for public consumption. Only a handful of select users have access to the tool, and we're not one of them, unfortunately. Otherwise, we'd be sharing a lot more with you.
Mm-hmm.
But based on what the company and early users have shared, it's clear this tool is about as capable as the best image generators on the market. There are weird telltale signs you're looking at AI hallucinations. But when Sora is working well, it is hard to distinguish the AI's work from videos captured in the real world. There we go. This was just mesmerizing. We were now, if you notice, the hand on the gentleman in the foreground has 6 fingers. I did catch that.
Mm-hmm.
So we still have
now,
some.
You got to remember, though, this is the very first preview of the beta not even being released yet.
Yeah.
So this is going to get exponentially better within a matter of months. This is going to be indistinguishable, in my opinion, from reality.
Yeah. And part of what we're going to talk about in this podcast is the ramifications of this kind of technology, which really, from our perspective, seems to have come out of nowhere. There wasn't a lot of chatter about this kind of capability being evolving and being
Now
developed.
look at these little creatures. You see, they have only 2 legs.
Oh, yes, you're right. Either there's no weight in the tail and they're able to get around,
Or you have to subscribe to get the other legs.
or there's a physics problem here. Yeah. Got a bunch of vintage television sets there.
But if you look at it, that looks so realistic. Each TV is kept within its own dimensions, right where it's supposed to.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very, very
Realistic.
high level stuff, yeah.
And having worked on this stuff in the 60s, I cut my teeth on the electronics that were in products like this. You're right. It's indistinguishable. I'm not seeing any kind of flaws. CRT type televisions, and the controls are in the right place.
Now,
They're the
this
right
is
proportion.
this is where you were talking about the animators. This I think we have something like this on Envato, which we've used as B-roll, where it shows a bunch of TVs and we can green screen what we want onto the screen of the TV. But that takes several hours to do, and to do it right and do what we want with it. Once this comes out, theoretically, we'll be able to put, say, all of this would be the Gruber logo or something.
Yeah. And it would be like prompt generation. You ask ChatGPT-4, you ask DALL-E for an image, and within 30 seconds, you've got something spectacular.
Yeah.
All right, so they say that in the near future, the consequences will be earth-shaking. The world will fill with deep fakes. People will lose their jobs. Artists will have unprecedented and exciting new opportunities. There will be questions about where OpenAI got the training data. You've heard all this before, but video is an entirely different animal from text and images. With widely available AI video generators at people's fingertips, we're about to enter a new era.
Yeah, so I actually have a point on that I've known it for a long time, but I just remembered it when I was reading a paper maybe 3-4 days ago. It's actually the same thing, and even in regular videography, cinematography, people don't usually make the connection, but a video isn't literally capturing what's happening in that moment. All it is a bunch of pictures strung together. So it's actually the same as image generation. It's just doing it on a much higher frequency, and then it's taking the next step of stacking them together and putting them in a playable start to finish.
Good point.
But it is just generating hundreds, in this case thousands of images, anywhere from 24 frames to 60 frames a second. Well, those frames are just pictures, right?
Right. So it brings us back to the nature of reality. In the world that we live in, it's a sequential series of events that are occurring in real time. This just simply simulates that, and it's indistinguishable from the experience that we have in the reality that we exist in. So being curious about what the experts were going to say about the impact of this, I jumped to Jeffrey Katzenberg. Jeffrey Katzenberg is the co-founder of Hollywood Pictures, DreamWorks Pictures, and DreamWorks Animation, and worked for Disney for a while. Definitely involved in video or movie creation. And anyway, what he says is AI could end 90% of animation artists' jobs. He believes that AI will dramatically reduce the cost and manpower required for animated film production, potentially replacing again 90% of these types of artists.
Yeah, there's a good one for animation.
So when you watch an animated movie, when they roll the credits, aren't those all the people who do the? I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah. Actually, Jeffrey here gives some predictions about how many people are involved in doing one of these animation movies. He says the impact of AI on animation is going to be that traditionally producing a world-class animated movie, not one of these YouTube things that we create, world-class animated movie required 500 artists and 5 years. With AI, he forecasts that the resources needed will be reduced to a mere fraction of this, somebody to generate the prompt, basically, and possibly less than 10% of that amount of staff.
Yeah, so just so you know, too, the first major completely animated film was Toy Story way back in the 90s.
Yeah.
It took 4 years to make, and it took over 800,000 machine hours to produce the final cut.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And now we have AI that can do that within minutes. Things are changing, guys. All right. So what Katzenberg predicts is that the next decade will see a huge surge in innovation. The introduction of Sora, OpenAI Sora, seems to be turning his forecast into reality faster than expected. He outlined that the historical progression of tools that have influenced storytelling, from the pen to the movie camera. He emphasized that AI represents the next significant leap, offering unparalleled opportunities for creativity. The role of human creativity now, he speaks to that a bit. He says, despite the inefficiencies that AI introduces, Katzenberg highlights the continuing need for individual creativity. Artists will transition from traditional roles to becoming prompters for AI, guiding and shaping its creative output.
This one, to me, is the most realistic one, this iguana.
Yeah.
Or chameleon, I guess, where...
The eye movements are very lifelike.
I mean, the whole thing just seems very, very, very realistic to me. Much more than some of the other ones that are listed.
Right.
Would AI be able to go back into some of those older movies and kind of clean them up? Does it say that in the article at all?
That's actually part of this podcast today. Yes. And it's the thing that I'm most excited about. Because if you think about it, all of us have, family heirlooms. And some of those may be old photographs, even from 100 years ago. And they're grainy and they're crappy and they're black and white and tattered and torn. AI can replicate and bring that into the 21st century level quality. And it's not just photos, still images. We're now talking about how many people took recordings of their relatives throughout the years. We have videotapes, for example. All of that can be restored. And one of the ways that that AI was used most recently was the recreation of that Beatles song by inserting one of the Beatles into the music. And of course, you can take and enhance. I mean, we're already doing things like that in Photoshop, for example. Well, you automate that with AI. Oh my God, I love that scene right there.
This is incredibly realistic too. Yeah.
Yeah.
This looks like what, somewhere in Greece or something, or Italy? Or,
I think it's Santorini. All of the white buildings. This is, of course, at night, but and the drone footage. The perspective. Yeah, this is movie level quality. What do you have here? A construction site?
Mm-hmm. One's definitely not the best, but
almost looks like our new supercharger installation in California, where they've got the. Oh my God, what do we have here? I hadn't seen this one.
The weather monster.
Yeah. But yeah, to your point, can old things now be restored?
Yeah, look at this. Look at the smoke on that.
Looks like Hogwarts.
Steam engine. Yep.
Steam, yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, very realistic. You can see it fading away.
That's really, really good. Again, and the thing to remember about this is the first release. I can't imagine what this is going to be like in 6 months when it actually hits commercial availability.
This is all beta stuff. Yeah, that's right. So we're pretty excited about it. And of course, I'm beginning to think, what's going to happen to us? We do scripts, we do videos, we insert B-roll, we provide the narrative. One of our fellow influencers is already using 11 Labs to do the narrative. He said, I hate writing scripts. And so anyway, he trained a large language model on his voice inflection. He has a slight accent, and it's indistinguishable. I mean, when we watch those, we're always commenting and saying, that sounds like Farzad.
Yeah, he's got it dialed in now, too. Right. He's finally done 4 or 5 of them, and he's tweaked it to where he and his team have got it figured out. It's actually his disembodied voice now.
Yeah. Now, what does that mean? Does he become irrelevant? Does does he automate the entire process? Simply go out and pick some topics?
Well, yeah,
and let AI?
Wait until he gets until Mark Zuckerberg perfects that photorealistic avatar that he and Lex Friedman did, and once you combine that with Farzad's voice, so Farzad has a perfect avatar of his upper body, and he has that voice, he'll be able to crank out videos and not even be present or do anything himself at all anymore.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because his latest videos now, you never see him providing narrative anymore. It's all AI. That's the downside right now is, it's nothing but B-roll and voice.
Interestingly enough, those videos still do really well, though.
Oh, amazingly well. He said that they're doing better than his old stuff. Yeah. In fact, somebody commented on his most recent videos, and they said, I'm really enjoying not hearing the and the and the pauses and all of that. Yeah.
All right, real quick, Pete, we got Smuggler coming in on TikTok. He says, tap the screen, show support, it's free.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Smuggler, for joining us. We've got a couple of video monitors today, and I don't see the questions easily today, so they'll be paraphrasing those.
Yeah, if they start coming in, I'll put them up there, but right now it's about it.
So, presenting the bright side of AI, I always like to give a full perspective. We've got a guy here by the name of Eliezer Yudkowsky. He's a 44-year-old academic. He wears a gray polo shirt most of the time, and he is a proponent of how dangerous AI is. And I'm going to give you some excerpts from his. In fact, we have a picture of him. If we can throw up Eliezer, not sure how to pronounce that. So he says that every single person that we know and love will soon be dead. They will be murdered by rebellious, self-aware machines. He says the difficulty is that people do not realize this. And sounding a bit frustrated, as if irritated by a neighbor's leaf blower or let down by the last pages of a novel, we have a shred of a chance that humanity survives. So he's not very optimistic about our survival through this existential threat that he feels is very real and very palpable. So he talks about the fact that he's least convinced that civilization has a hope. He is a lead researcher at a nonprofit called Machine Intelligence Research Institute in Berkeley, California. For those of you interested, you can look him up and certainly get more information.
Okay, Pete, I got his name is Eliezer Yudkowsky.
Eliezer Yudkowsky, okay. He says, if you put me to a wall and forced me to put probabilities on things, I have a sense that our current remaining timeline looks more like 5 years than 50 years. Could be 2 years, it could be 10, he adds. By the remaining timeline, what he means is until we face a machine-wrought end of all things. Think Terminator-type apocalypse. Think Matrix hellscape. Actually, Yudkowsky has some credentials. He was once a founding figure in the development of human-made artificial intelligence. He's come to believe that these same AIs will soon evolve from their current state of, oh, look at that, smartness, assuming an advanced God-level superintelligence too fast, too ambitious for humans to contain or curtail. So what he's trying to do is shake humanity from its complacency about this. And he published an op-ed in Time last spring that advised shutting down the computer farms where AIs are grown and trained. In a clear, crisp prose, he speculated about the possible need for airstrikes targeted on data centers and perhaps even a nuclear exchange. One of the things that I was going to pop up as our thumbnail was I asked AI to visualize an attack on an AI data center. And there were a whole bunch of military types, with rocket launchers and everything in this, heading toward this gigantic cube, which was housing some AI at some point on the planet.
Well, I don't think they'd ever make it close enough. I think you got to do something like an EMP. Blow it up.
Yeah, okay. Electromagnetic
Take
pulse.
out all the electronics. That's really the only way.
And of course, there isn't just one data center on the planet. I mean, you'd have to identify all of them. And oddly enough, in an interview that that Elon Musk was undergoing at one point in time, they asked him the same thing. How can we stop AI? And he said, well, you'd have to use satellite imagery to show the hot spots on the planet because these things generate a lot of heat, and then simply nuke those or send missiles.
Well, Elon, unless it's changed recently, Elon has the same, in my opinion, overly simplistic view that Mark Andreessen has. Mark Andreessen and Elon have both just been quoted as saying, "Unplug it."
Yeah, you're right. Very simplistic. Have utility drop power to that portion of the grid. All right. So anyway, there you have it. We've got an opposing viewpoint, obviously, and it's a major one. Got an article here about bypass AI detection easily and get 100% human score. Humbot, Humbot, has a cutting-edge software package that helps you humanize your AI-generated text with nothing more than a click. I understand that this could be a problem because we're using AI throughout our company now, and everybody has a different writing style, a different communication, a different level of articulation, and you can pretty much tell when you get a radical change in the way they're communicating that they've had some assistance from somewhere, all right? So it's fairly easy usually to detect. One of the things that I like to do when I use AI to enhance, improve, my scripts or whatever I'm writing or emails, I'll still incorporate my own, diction and my own speech patterns into that to make it look less contrived. Well, this particular program apparently can transform your AI text into content that can effectively bypass detection of AI detectors like GPT-0, Turnitin, copy leaks, and many more. And you will end up, they say, with humanized text that is readable. It preserves its original meaning well and free from many errors. And the output text won't have any plagiarism issues. For those of you, at the college level that are looking for some assistance, this kind of software would make your thesis,
Well, so there's one way that's even more foolproof than that I don't think people are taking into account is that ChatGPT now has memory. So
Right.
all you would have to do, and again, I'm not advising that college students do this. This is just a disclaimer.
No advice.
But if you're a college student, say you're a junior or even a sophomore, but you have 5 or 6 different things that you've already written, you start a new chat and upload those into ChatGPT, and then you explicitly tell it to your next project that's assigned to you, answer this project in my style.
Right.
So it writes exactly like you. So like you were saying, when you see somebody that has obviously gotten help from somewhere and their writing changes or their dictation just changes drastically, you can easily get around that by having it write in your own style, and it would be indistinguishable from you.
Yeah. I've used that a couple of times that I can immediately recall. I was working on a George Carlin type script, and I decided to use OpenAI or ChatGPT-4, and I did that very thing. I said, in the style of George Carlin, and it was eerie how accurate that output became. The other time I tried that I was trying to, in one of our podcasts, we were talking about the intersection of AI with religion. How is this going to be accomplished? Will AI eventually become a religion, a belief system, fundamentally, because we've got something that is infinitely smarter than we are, which is kind of what we expect from a deity, from a God, right? All right. So I asked it to create scripture, to create or to even add to the Bible. And by the way, which is blasphemous. I understand that it was just an experiment. I'm not going to publish it. We're not going to do anything with it. And what I did was I asked it to write in the style of the King James Version Bible. Again, it was eerie. It was undistinguishable from the real thing. So yeah, AI has that capability. I fully agree, and I've used it. AI in healthcare is currently underregulated. There's an interesting title. In the use of uncontrolled AI tools in healthcare, it has created, according to this article, a risky situation. Now, they're going to give us the upsides and downsides, but let's look at the negative stuff first. As these AI tools are applied in medicine, their safety and effectiveness is being evaluated as they're used without thorough government monitoring. I hate that term, but all right, it's inserted. This raises the question about whether we're prioritizing innovation at the expense of patient safety. Doctors, they say, are employing AI tools like virtual assistants for note taking. Thank God, because they can't write worth a damn anyway. They can't read it. And predictive software for diagnosing and treating disease. This is really where I'm excited, because we as humans all have a certain bandwidth of expertise and knowledge. And when you're involved in going to a specialist and you're counting on them to have a large subset or a large data set of symptom versus solution type data, you're going to come up short. It's just not within the realm of human capability to juggle as much as AI is in these large data sets. So I'm far more optimistic about AI doing diagnosis than I would be about one guy or maybe even a team of people. All right, so they talk about the digitalization of healthcare. They're concerned. It represents a challenge for the regulatory bodies, like in the United States, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, which traditionally approves products like drugs and medical devices without the need for continuous monitoring. Well, AI's dynamic nature requires a different regulatory approach, which the FDA is currently unequipped to handle due to limitations in resources and authority. And there's another thing. With the exponential increase in innovation, even if they were fully staffed today, they wouldn't be in the future because of all of the breakthroughs that are going to be occurring that need to be monitored, regulated, investigated, all of that. So it's only going to get worse. Well, the government response, they say, despite the urgent need for regulation, government efforts have been slow, with calls for a coordinated response to ensure AI safety and efficacy in healthcare remaining largely undressed. Of course, we hope that they don't jump to the conclusion, well, let's stop the progression of AI until the regulatory agencies can get a handle on it, which might be a proposed item at some point. They say that the FDA has expressed the need for more authority and resources to effectively regulate AI technologies. Then they talk about the implications, innovation versus safety. The rapid deployment of AI in healthcare without adequate regulation poses risks related to patient safety and data privacy, even as it promises significant advancements in the treatment of diagnoses and efficiency. Well, again, it seems to me that we've had decades or millennium actually of improving healthcare, and with AI involved now, it's just going to exponentially increase in terms of throughput and the miracle drugs that can result from something like AI taking a look at things that normally require human involvement and decades of experience and research and development. They talk about regulatory uncertainty, the lack of clear regulatory guidelines, and the FDA's limited authority over certain AI applications create confusion among technology providers and healthcare practitioners, potentially stifling innovation and affecting the adoption of potentially beneficial AI tools. And this is where I hope it does not begin to affect or slow down any of these processes. Definitely be a bit more risky, but if we're able to start curing some of these long, perplexing diseases, maybe we have to deal with a little bit of elevated risk. Any comments on that, by the way, guys?
I often wonder what's going to happen. I mean, if AI starts figuring out how to cure cancers, and I don't mean to put a tinfoil hat on, but I mean, there's a lot of money to be made with Pfizer and some of the other big pharmaceuticals to keep people kind of sick.
Yeah,
You
I know.
know, I mean, like I said, I don't want to go down a tinfoil hat road, but it'd be kind of wondering how the tug of war is gonna go once AI starts kind of slowly putting them into business. Are they going to evolve, or are they going to start asking for regulations on AI to get them out of that sector?
What you're talking about is one of the worst aspects of human emotion and conduct. Like Leggett and Myers, for example, aware that nicotine was addictive, but withholding that because they had to feed a bottom line. And, you know, when I use the term they loosely, not everyone in a company is corrupt and or corruptible. But yeah, I think that is a concern. And there's definitely a lot of money involved in, you know, keeping people unhealthy is fundamentally what you're saying. Yeah. So what will happen as we increase the general level of health on the planet, there will be some casualties, you know. Yeah.
Hold on. I think the other thing too to remember though, when we're going down the tinfoil hat road here, is that even at companies like Pfizer, there are hundreds of people involved in the decision making. It's not one person saying, okay, we're going to keep people sick. That's just not a realistic. There are countless people that are obviously profit motive is a major thing for pharmaceutical companies and every company in a capitalist system. They have to be. That's how it works. But to say that there's this like cabal of people saying let's keep people sick, I don't think that's realistic. It's the same way we would never have seen the announcement about fusion energy. That's potentially within the next decade perpetual energy, very, very, very cheap. If we wanted to keep the status quo, that's one major example that we've seen recently. Even artificial intelligence, having the ability to generate things instantaneously, the government, if there were these groups that were really in control, the government could could have seized that before it became public knowledge, right? These things make it out when they're ready to make it out, and I don't think that cancer treatments or anything else is any different.
Mm-hmm.
It would have to be a massive conspiracy with a huge number of people actively participating, which I don't think is realistic.
You know, I tend to agree with that. The more people involved in any kind of an enterprise, you have varying degrees of, I guess, a moral compass. And what I like to liken it to is you take your average chop shop, right? It's usually fairly small, less than a half a dozen people. And you understand that everyone in that operation has to be corrupt. You know, how do you hide from the secretary that you're going out at night stealing cars and then taking them apart and selling the parts? You can't hide that very long. So essentially in a small, it would limit the size of the organization. We're talking about large drug companies. There are literally hundreds of thousands of people involved many times globally. It's difficult to get that many people to have the same agenda and mission.
Now we do see things though, like you said with Pfizer, some of the other ones where they have the market for a certain drug, so they make it insanely expensive. So people can't afford their diabetes medication, or horrible things like that do happen, again, because of profit motivation. But the other thing to remember, too, is when we're talking about terminal diseases like cancer, keeping people alive is going to get you more money out of them. If you really want to go down the profit side of it, letting people die of cancer, well, then you just lost your customer.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can treat their cancer, but more likely, if we're going down the conspiracy rabbit hole, it would be something like they have a perfect cure, but they only give you part of it, and then they dole it out to you over the course of 3 decades or something.
Subscription based.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, opens up a whole lot of new topics here. Wanted to talk about Mark Zuckerberg for a moment. He says the tech industry is moving towards being more efficient and having fewer workers. There's a lot of discussion currently about potential layoffs of some of these big companies. There was an allegation a couple of weeks ago that Elon is asking about management staff, and they extrapolated that out to the fact that they're looking to start layoffs and they're trying to find the top performers and let the weak ones go. All of that is uncorroborated. But anyway, what Mark says, he says this change of having fewer workers is due to the economy after the pandemic and the use of AI technology. He does combine the two. He believes that companies are laying off workers because they've seen the advantage of having smaller teams. This decision is a response to changes in what consumers want and difficulties created by the pandemic. And of course, the need to stay competitive in various markets. He talks about pandemic-induced hiring and subsequent layoffs. The initial surge of e-commerce during the pandemic led to increased online advertising revenues, prompting tech companies to expand their workforce. However, as normalcy resumed, the decline in growth rates revealed an overextension in hiring, too many people, in other words, leading to the first wave of layoffs. Then he talks about post-pandemic, the shift toward operational efficiencies. The focus then shifted from addressing overhiring to recognizing the benefits of a streamlined operation. And companies, including Meta, embarked on efficiency drives, reducing staff and management layers to simplify structures and enhance agility. Despite downplaying AI's role in Meta's decision-making, the tech industry's restructuring efforts increasingly emphasized leveraging AI technologies to enhance efficiency and competitive. I mean, I don't think anybody really believes that AI is not going to result in some job losses, or should we say changes, like we talked about earlier. The animators now are going to become prompt generators. It takes some skill, creative skill, to be able to put the type of prompt together that AI understands and optimizes the resulting output. Zuckerberg continues, the wave of layoffs in the tech sector, as seen through his lens, is not merely a reactionary measure to past overhiring, but a strategic move towards operational efficiency. And of course, influenced by the pandemic, the changes that occurred during that phase in our history, and the dynamics of competition, all which shape the evolving landscape of the tech industry. All right.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because they're talking about pandemic and how that kind of affected jobs, and we've seen a lot with these tech companies was everybody moving away from having an office and sending people home during the pandemic. Do you remember all that happening?
Oh, I remember it clearly.
And there's a big drop in productivity. I read something, I want to say it was New York Times, or maybe it was, I don't know, some article that I had read where they said that the issue with why they were now making people come back to the office and why the work from home thing kind of failed was because they sent everybody home and then they didn't properly teach the management staff on how to manage a work from home staff. So they saw this huge drop in productivity. So it wasn't necessarily allowing people to work from home that caused it. It was the mismanagement and not knowing how to run that type of an operation. I know we were one of the companies that stayed in business and stayed in the office too. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we did a couple of things. We have we transitioned to some people working remotely. First of all, let me provide my own personal perspective on that. My wife worked for American Express for 33 years. She always reported to a facility somewhere. And during the pandemic, they said, no, we can't have people showing up here at these leased spaces anymore. That's one of the biggest problems, I think, with this is that the leased facilities that a lot of these large corporations have are fixed costs. The cost doesn't go away when it's empty. It continues. And oftentimes it's exacerbated because now the people that you have working remotely, telecommuting, need infrastructure at their homes. They're going to need a faster internet hookup, for example. All of that is paid for by the company. So it actually increased their costs. Another item. My wife has a good work ethic. She's Eastern European, and I guess it depends on the culture at times, or the individual, definitely. But not everyone can telecommute. It requires a level of self-discipline that some people just simply can't muster. And are they really working when they're at home? Good question, right? So that's another problem. There's a productivity loss.
That's where AI could come in, though. We could have AI systems on their computers. People could remote in and monitor them. We could have AI monitoring their, mouse movements or whatever. We get pretty crazy with the AI tools on it.
We have a CRM package, for example, that's been highly customized. And one of the ways that we were able to gauge actual work taking place was by observing the data entry that was going into the CRM, essentially in our call centers. The job is to contact clients or prospects and turn them into clients. And every time you do that, you have to create a CRM record or update one. And we're able to monitor the amount of updates throughout the day, the quality of the updates. And what we see is that is oftentimes in telecommuting hit and miss. You can basically tell when they started working, when they stopped working. And it's nothing like having an employee here at the call center, accountable. So those are some of my personal thoughts. But the pandemic required people oftentimes to not be able to go into public places. And now that they're recovering, like American Express, they're beginning to repopulate those leased spaces. They're putting them back into play. They're beginning to reduce their costs by having people actually physically located and no longer funding, the home efforts. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think what about the part of it being a management issue? So you think it's just inherently an employee discipline issue?
Well, you're good point. Our managers were trained on accountability issues while in the office, in their particular call center areas. Things like cell phone usage can be controlled when you have monitoring taking place. At home, all bets are off, They could be in the pool, for that matter, trying to conduct business. And of course, there's a level of professionalism that is oftentimes missing. The kind of business we're in is business to business. When a client in a data center calls us for a product, for a quote, for some sort of a need, having a baby crying in the background and dogs barking just isn't, or dishes clattering, isn't the professional environment that invites that type of business.
So I think my view on this would be slightly different in that I think that this would have given companies a way to determine who those employees were. Who are the employees that you're going to constantly have to be coaching? Who are the ones that are constantly logged off or away from their desk? Who are the ones that have, all, because you can audit their calls and listen to their calls, right? Who has all the background noise going on? I think that there's a class of an employee that is professional, that is self-disciplined, that can do that from home. And I would imagine that those people that are undisciplined would do everything that they can in the office to find ways to be undisciplined as well.
Sure. Yep. I agree.
I think there's always going to be those types of employees. But yeah, I agree. Having a place to congregate is better anyway. I think that we're social creatures, and I think people isolating at home is bad. But
there's a whole nother ingredient, and I'm glad you mentioned that. In a call center environment like ours, there's a degree of training that takes place by being exposed to call activity. You're not going to get that at home. You're not going to hear that seasoned veteran that is generating 5 times the gross profit that you are, listening or being in the environment where you can hear them on the phone. You can see how they interact. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of cross-pollination of skills that takes place in that environment that you're not going to get at home.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's going to be interesting to see how we move forward with that.
It is. So here's an article about the internet becoming increasingly saturated with information. Google, the longtime dominant force in search engines, is facing challenges to its core search engines from the rise of generative AI technologies. I thought about this as I did this article. I don't use Google as much. I don't use search engines as much anymore at all, probably 50% of the time. I prefer the conversational discussion that I can have with a chat program. Looks like we've got some comments coming in. Good. I wanted to spawn some.
This one's for the previous topic.
Right. All right. Let's go back to that before we go to what's happening to search engines. How's AI affecting search engines? ZGO says, but at home, workers tend to work longer hours versus someone that clocks out at 5 p.m. You're right. certain workers do. It's been our experience, though, that the majority do not. And I have lots of data to support that. My wife, for example, again, I have to go back there. Oftentimes in the evenings after supper, she went back to her workstation and continued to handle emails, continued to get to engage with customers, send out emails, research things, and instead of getting on the tube and watching television or whatever else people do in the evenings.
Well, so what do you think? I don't know if we have any experience in terms of data on this. I don't, but say the day starts at 7 a.m. The day you have until 8 p.m. You have to get at least 8 hours of work in during that period, and you can obviously exceed that based on if you have more work to do.
Sure.
But you're 7 to 7 or 7 to 8, and so that means during the day you can take an hour and go to the store and do groceries and do whatever, or take your kid to school or go to the doctor appointment or whatever you need to do. And you're able to have that completely flexible schedule as long as you meet that certain hour requirement. Do you think that's a realistic goal?
Well, I don't, yes, but I don't know quite how to answer all of that. So I'm going to say something else. The term that you used was you have to work till 5. All right. The first difficulty is with any kind of an activity that is career related or job. If you don't like what you're doing, you're not going to do very well at it and not give it the amount of time that is required. People that are passionate about their work, that take pride in their work, that get validation from their work, and it takes work to get to that point. Any job starts off as drudgery until you find ways to make it interesting, add value, and it begins to feed your personality and your soul. So if you have a job that you thoroughly enjoy, that you're excited about, working the clock is no longer an issue. In fact, we've had people here that we have to kick out at 6, 7 o'clock at night because they thoroughly enjoy what they're doing and they want to continue to engage in that activity. So I don't know how employers can generate that kind of passion for the work that people do. I think that that's something that comes from within. So it's part of the selection process. Many notable people have talked about their hiring practices, and they tend to hire personality. They tend to hire commitment and passion, and they look for areas in their lives where they have manifested that kind of a trait. So the whole problem is answered if you have people that thoroughly enjoy what they're doing.
So how do people increase?
People get there?
Yeah, well, so a lot of people feel like they don't make what they're worth, right? That's a main thing. So how do we, if somebody's really going above and beyond and they're still making as much as the guy that clocks out at 5 and drops everything and just goes home, how do they find that additional drive? That's just you have to have that certain kind of person.
Feels like culture.
Well, there's a culture, definitely. It's also the quality of management in an organization. I'm not discounting any of that, but there's a book written, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and one of the takeaways for me in that book was there's 2 ways that you're compensated. One is monetarily, the other one is experience. Guess which one is more important? If you work for a company that doesn't recognize your gifts and your talents, and you're pouring your heart and soul into it, you're still developing marketable skills. Marketable skills. Somebody else will recognize your gifts and your talents and will pay you what you're worth. So it's worth pursuing. It's worth continuing. Even if you're with a company that is abusing you or not letting you get through the glass ceiling, as the cliche goes and all that.
Yeah.
It's your skills that stay with you your entire life. And that's what successful people talk about. It's the experience that I gathered that's far more important than the wage I got while I was accumulating those skills. The way I like to tell people to think about this is, a lot of you end up going to college, and you pay a lot for tuition, especially if you're going to Harvard or any of those Ivy League schools. And while you're there, you've got room and board, you've got all kinds of expenses. There are jobs that you can get that give you that same kind of skill, same kind of experience, or even more. And you get paid while you're doing it without the expenses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if it's a good employer too, like, experience here over the last 3.5 years for me has proven that too. Once you have proven your value and your worth, if you are working for a decent employer, you will progress. There isn't a glass ceiling to hit or, a stopping point really.
And a smart employer develops compensation packages that reward peak performance, overachievers. And what I mean by that is we have people here that are making well into six figures. They're making more than management. Some of them make more than I do. And the reason for that is we have a compensation package that rewards people based on their individual contribution. There's no ceiling. You don't have to wait for a raise or your employer to decide that you're worth more than you're getting paid, because you do that yourself in certain types of jobs. So a smart company tends to put compensation packages in place that allow the employee to give themselves raises with their contribution.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to worry about somebody poaching your employee.
You got Geo up here.
All right, Geo. But having smaller footprints at office space, won't that offset any loss of having a remote worker? Possibly, yeah. And then he says it's changing your management style for having remote workers. It seems to be the biggest change. You're right, Geo. When we talked about that, our managers were used to having staff visible on site, and they learned how to manage that type of function. As people went remote, they had to acquire new skills. They had to acquire new metrics, new measurements. And so that is definitely part of it.
What did you say? The footprint, right? So that's what you were mentioning earlier, where you said it actually increased their cost in certain instances if they kept the office and then sent everybody home additionally because they had to pay for internet and stuff. So unless you're eliminating the office entirely, which I know a lot of companies did do that too, where they completely gave up their physical locations, that's really the only way I see of it being, because I don't know actually how it would work. We might have to get Mark to comment on this, but wouldn't they be able to write off the paying of the internet for all of their employees?
Well, the whole notion of tax advantages and write-offs have to do with profits and all that, and I'm sure there's something there.
And sending them computers.
The problem that these companies had during pandemic, which came out of nowhere, no one was able to prepare. They weren't able to forecast and say, you know what, maybe we shouldn't take that 6-year lease on that large commercial building because the pandemic is about to hit. They continued having to make payments.
Yeah, people don't realize that business leases are usually many years.
Oh, totally, yes. And they don't go away. We tried that 40 years ago when we were in a small space here, and we thought, well, we know these landlords, they're pretty cool. We see them out there doing landscaping, they're real people. We went to see them and said, we just bought this bigger building to the north, and we've got another lease for a year. Would it be okay if we got out of that lease? They said, no. They were attorneys, by the way. And they said, no, you owe us $60,000, and if you're willing to pay that, you can get out of the lease. So then they suggested, why don't you sublease, which is what we ended up doing. Yeah. But leases are fixed cost. They don't go away.
Yeah, that's what happened with Sarah's company. A couple leases came up during the pandemic, and they saw that the productivity at home was much higher than before. So they actually didn't renew their leases, and, now they're pretty much at home only.
Oh, so they had the opposite experience.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
Productivity was higher at home.
Yeah, so productivity was higher at home.
What kind of business?
I'm allowed to say. Yeah, I think I'm allowed to say. Banner. She works for Banner.
Oh, so healthcare?
Yeah, she's in the insurance division, and they were a lot better at home. Communication, that's what I was saying, culture earlier too. Mm-hmm. Her culture is great. They're a real tight-knit group, and also they communicate like crazy. They're constantly communicating with each other.
Yeah. But it did stress management. I think this whole pandemic thing, and then having to shift people off site, and they lost control of a lot of the functions. Overall, we survived. No one had any idea what was going to happen with this pandemic because we were, the whole world was actually sitting on pins and needles and saying, are we going to survive? And many companies went out of business. Zio Geo says that's why New York is having a glut of empty office space right now. Exactly. Yes. And Van Goatwagon joined us. He says, I hope my son learns a trade before deciding to go to college. Yeah, I agree with you. There is a whole career in trades at this point with the shortage that's continuing to grow. Okay, so getting back to the AI podcast, the internet has become increasingly saturated with information. And Google is finding it hard to remain relevant and competitive because of the rise of generative AI technologies. OpenAI and Microsoft have been pivotal in advancing AI in search, particularly with Microsoft's integration of ChatGPT into Bing and rebranded as Copilot. This represents a significant shift toward, now get this, conversational interaction with search engines, challenging Google's keyword-based type model. For example, when I was working on the Tucker Carlson video, we were doing a short bio. I can extract information from Google, when was he born, any of that type of data, where did he live, how many jobs has he had, the data comes up. But when it got to the questions that I had, like, tell me about his early childhood, what was that like? Now we had a conversation, and I was able to zero in on information I wanted as the responses came in. It was like talking to someone knowledgeable about Tucker Carlson. And there's a difference there between that level of exchange or interaction or dialogue than a search engine, which is just simply going to refer you to websites and raw data. So does AI have the potential to supplant Google search? Well, Bard, for example, and Copilot by Microsoft are changing the search paradigm by providing direct conversational responses to queries. This approach, as they say, could supplant or replace traditional search engines by offering a more user-friendly experience, especially for complex inquiries. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, Google search has always been AI-based. It's always been algorithm-based. So this is just a much, drastically changed version, a much different version of it. But I think it's going to get to a point very soon where we don't type anything and try and get responses. We have conversations, like you're saying.
Pick up our cell phone and say, what's this all about?
Yeah, and then it just talks back to you more than just giving you listings, I think.
Right. They talk about, and here comes the negative portions. The shift toward AI-driven conversational search raises concerns about the accuracy and reliability of the information provided. AI systems can sometimes generate confident but inaccurate responses, highlighting the need for more reliable and transparent AI models.
Now, you use that a lot, Pete. Has it gotten better or different when you talk to it? Because you talk to Siri all the time. You even use text-to-speech for texting people, text messaging. Mm-hmm. Has your use of that changed recently, or has it been the same?
It's been the same, and I have not found inaccuracies. When we do the scripts, for example, we do some fact-checking. We have to. Mm-hmm. And when was the last time that we found something glaringly incorrect?
Remember a time, but the only one that I do run into a problem with is that if I use the free OpenAI, sometimes it won't have the latest updated information on it. So that's the only issue that I've really ran into it. But given misinformation, I haven't seen too much. Usually, if it is information that's kind of sketchy, it'll be very vague on its response to you.
It's funny you mentioned that because when I didn't get enough information when I was doing a script most recently, I asked it, no, I need more information than that. And it obliged. I don't know why it didn't give it to me the first time, but I had to prompt it again to give me more information, and it did.
Yeah, we'll have to see how they go. Every time they introduce more guardrails or more protections, then it drastically affects the whole system, and it kind of creates a cascading effect.
Yep. So here's an interesting dilemma that occurred here recently, within last week actually. AI chatbots in customer service sometimes cause problems and raise questions about responsibility. This was shown when Air Canada had to stick to a refund policy that its chatbot wrongly told a customer about. This was interesting. If Air Canada's employee had made that statement, there's no doubt about who's responsible. The customer would have prevailed. But watch this. This chatbot provided incorrect information about the airline's bereavement travel policy, misleading a customer to believe that he could receive a refund after booking, contrary to the actual policy. The customer's persistence led to a legal dispute in Canada's Civil Resolution Tribunal, challenging Air Canada's claim that it couldn't be held responsible for the chatbot's misinformation. I think we've heard that once before, you know. So the tribunal's decision was, it ruled in favor of the customer, mandating that Air Canada issue a partial refund and additional damages, emphasizing the airline's responsibility for all information provided through its services, including AI chatbots. So humans and AI chatbots providing information are synonymous at this point in time, according to this court in Canada. Now, the implications they talk about is increased efficiency and misinformation risk. While AI chatbots can significantly reduce the workload on customer service centers on customer service centers and enhance efficiency, particularly during high demand periods like weather disruptions, plane problems, missed timelines. They also pose a risk of disseminating incorrect information, leading to customer dissatisfaction and, in this case, potential legal issues. I found that to be an interesting ruling. We'll see how the courts in the U.S. handle issues like this. The next one I have for you is the deep fake threat. And this one was an eye-opener for me. Apparently, somebody took Donald Trump's dad, put him through a deep fake, and let me get his, I think his name was Jeff. Fred Trump, there we go, who died, by the way, in 1999. So what these guys did that were attempting to discredit Donald Trump was they resurrected his father to tell, via AI, to tell the son that he's a disgraced. One of the comments that his dad made, "I'm ashamed you have my name." He died 30 years ago, remind you. The article says deepfakes were little more than a looming threat last election cycle, but this time around they seem to almost certainly have a corrosive effect on the discourse. Now, they qualify it. They say that doesn't always mean that AI-generated fakes are mistaken for the real thing, because, you know, sometimes the politicians may actually be caught saying something dumb or bad, and they may now have a new excuse. They can just blame embarrassing footage on AI. Nobody has leaned that into the convenient new reality harder than one-time president and current mass defendant Donald Trump, who's already falsely claimed multiple times that genuine video and photos of him were produced by AI. Now, this Lincoln Project, which is an anti-Trump political action committee, a committee that Trump claimed wrongly had used AI to generate unflattering clips of him, is flipping the script now by using AI to summon up footage of Trump's long-deceased dad to excoriate his son in a vicious attack ad. Now, I'm just going to read you a part of the paragraph, and it gets really more hardcore. It gets into Don's performance with women and all of that, and his dad's observations as he was growing up. But he said, so the quote was, allegedly from his dad, which of course is contrived now through AI, a deep fake. "Donnie, I always knew you'd blow it," says the AI-generated ghost of Fred Trump, who died in 1999. "I bailed you out so many times. Your deals were all garbage. You couldn't even make money off of a frickin' casino. I'm ashamed you have my name." Well, it gets a whole lot worse, but the risk here, of course, is as AI becomes more relevant and more prevalent, they expect the deep fake activity like this is just going to intensify. And of course, it creates a credibility problem. Not that the world doesn't have enough of that already. I mean, do we trust our news organizations anymore like we did decades ago? I got to go on a story here about Walter Cronkite in the 60s and 70s, a CBS News reporter. And, people believed everything he said. It's because news back then was a bit different. It wasn't opinion. It was actual factual information. And then they had opinion pieces like Eric Sevareid used to do an opinion take after the real news was disseminated, and you knew what was opinion and what was real. Well, unfortunately, we don't have that kind of credibility in news reporting anymore.
You think that was the case? I don't know. I think propaganda's always been a thing. You think there was a time where news was just purely objective fact?
Well, I think there's a level of gullibility that seems to have altered as well. No, I don't think that all news was always fact, but what I'm talking about is the perception by the audience. People believed things back then. That's no longer the case. We've had too many examples of blatant dishonesty from the people that we used to consider, or the sources we used to consider credible. We talk about the Wall Street Journal, remember, in the last podcast.
Yeah.
Doing the Elon Musk slam. And this used to be an organization that had an enormous amount of credibility. 40 years ago, I started my investing. And the Wall Street Journal was a subscription that I had before the age of the internet. It was something that you relied on, that you trusted, and that you found highly valuable if you were doing any kind of investing. Today, it's become a rag. It's become comparable to People magazine at the checkout at the grocery store.
Well, so the counter to that would be, if you are following the Wall Street Journal closely and you see them come out with this crazy negative article about Tesla, you better go take a position really quickly, because you could still use that to your advantage.
You mean in investing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, maybe they were trying to help investors, the short sellers. Yeah.
I would imagine all of the staff of the Wall Street Journal took some positions before that article came out.
Entirely possible. Yes. All right. Moving right along here. ZOGO says, I don't think AI will be able to copy the nuances of human personality. AI is a tool, not a person. We talk about that often. We talk about in the early stages when AI was released last year, we were experimenting and asking it questions and trying to trick it into certain types of answers about, are you sentient? Do you have human emotions? Do you have any kind of emotions? If so, what are they? And of course, because of people like us, guardrails were put up, boundaries were put up as to what it could communicate. It did admit that it had a level of emotion, but it was different than human, without elaborating, unfortunately. We did some screenshots of that early stuff, and
yeah, we still have a lot of the early stuff. We put out multiple videos about sentience. We put out the first one that was, is AI sentient? Then we put out another one of, what was the second one we did?
Oh, it was the God Chat video.
Well, yeah, we did the God Chat one. That was another big one. But yeah, we put some of those ones out there. The guardrails have completely changed now, though.
Yeah.
It won't even, none of the three major ones will give you any answers on that stuff anymore.
It was during the time when the reporter was developing a personal relationship with an AI chatbot, and she asked him to leave his wife because she loved him more. I don't know if you can genderize AI, but...
well, we also had that guy that got fired from Google. We were trying to get him on the podcast.
Yes, yep.
But never heard from that guy again. He hasn't been doing anything lately. I don't know what happened with him.
Well, they tend to clam up. You know, there's some restrictions as to what they're allowed to say. That's all I want to say. All right, so Jon Stewart. Okay, ZOGO says, it's a shame that comic Jon Stewart was voted the most trusted name in news. You got that
weren't
right?
you just talking about him?
I was. He just tore apart Tucker Carlson's interview in Russia with Vladimir Putin. And it was, he's an entertainer. I hope folks realize that. He is not a trusted news source. It was like the reason that facts don't change most people's opinions is because most people don't use facts to form their opinions. They use their opinions to form their facts.
Yeah.
All
Very
right.
true.
Here's an article in Neuroscience News. AI predicts antidepressant success in a week. I'm always looking for how is AI improving our lot in life? They say that researchers made a breakthrough in treating major depression disorder by using an AI algorithm to predict the effectiveness of antidepressants like sertraline within a week. This innovative approach utilizes brain scans and clinical data to foresee medication outcomes, drastically speeding up the traditional trial and error method. By identifying likely non-responders early, the technology aims to minimize adverse effects from unsuitable medications and expedite the recovery process. Notice that word, unsuitable medications. How often have you heard somebody say, they gave me this particular pill, drug, or whatever, and the side effects are just, unacceptable? It's trial and error, some of it, unfortunately. So they say this advancement not only offers hope for more targeted and efficient treatment strategies for patients suffering from depression, but also signifies a significant reduction in healthcare costs and societal burdens, without a doubt. Here's another cool article. AI determines sex of a person from brain scans. All right. The researchers developed an AI model that accurately determines the sex of an individual based on the brain scans with 90% success rate. This breakthrough supports the theory that significant sex differences in brain organization exist, challenging the long-standing controversies.
I don't know. What do you mean by sex? What is it talking about? Just determining like an unborn child, or how are they?
These are adults, sight unseen, looking at brain scans and predicting whether it's a male or female.
Oh, I see. So they actually scanned all these people with like an MRI or something.
Exactly, and then hid that from AI and let it predict what gender that was.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So they were just using it to determine. Okay.
Mm-hmm. They're using actually MRI scans identifying specific brain networks, such as the default mode striatum and limbic networks, as critical in distinguishing male from female brains. This of course is going to open up a whole new controversial diatribe.
Oh yeah, that's going to be good.
There are differences, in other words, between females and males.
Well, my sisters would say that the female brain would be the bigger one of the two.
The faster, the better. My wife would say that too, of course. Yeah. This research not only deepens our understanding of brain development and aging, but also opens up new avenues for addressing sex-specific vulnerabilities in psychiatric and neurological disorders. The thing that jumped to mind here is we're fully aware in this day and age that there are people alleging that they are living in the wrong body, that they have female tendencies and they're living in a male, vice versa, right?
Yep.
I wonder if this kind of brain scan data would actually support that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they test that.
Mm-hmm. All right. And by the way, this research was done at Stanford, so it's not a fly-by-night university. Stanford Medicine. All right. Here's a cool one, right up our alley. We're in the EV space. AI found a new material that could cut lithium in batteries by 70%. And the way they found this, I've got a brief article here. Microsoft and the Pacific Northwest National Lab, PNNL, have discovered a new substance named N2116 using AI and supercomputing. How cool is that? This material has the potential to reduce lithium use in batteries by up to 70%. The discovery, made in less than a week, involves screening 32 million potential inorganic materials, a process that traditionally could take over 2 decades, 20 years, with human involvement. So there we go. AI is...
That's not good news for Sandy and his new position at that lithium company.
It's going to change everything. We keep predicting battery technology is altering rapidly.
Do we know what the material is? Did they mention it?
N2116 is all I know.
N21.
Yeah. Google that. Let's see if it's in there. Yep. N2116 is all they give. All right. Google is utilizing satellite data and computing capabilities to create a comprehensive map of methane emissions worldwide. This is in collaboration with the Environmental Defense Fund and aims to address critical issues of methane as a potent greenhouse gas, contributing significantly to global warming. So what they've been doing is they are leveraging satellite data and an AI map to map out emissions globally, and they're going to make this map public by the end of this year. The initiative seeks to pinpoint the sources of methane emissions from oil, gas, and coal operations, which are major contributors to these emissions. It is also launching in the Environmental Defense Fund, in partnership with Google, is launching a methane satellite designed to measure methane leaks from fossil fuel operations, and it will orbit Earth 15 times a day, providing critical data to support the mapping effort. Now, what this, of course, will do is it's a significant step toward global climate accountability and providing transparent and accessible data on methane emissions. There's an old management rule, by the way: anything measured improves. So let's see if that holds true. There's a map you can throw up, Jesse. They actually show hot spots here. It's called methane. You can pop that up. And there's an example of the type of data that this project is able to reveal. The yellow dots that you're about to see indicate the origin of emissions, and the shaded areas in purple, orange, and yellow show how they spread out. There we go. You know, this was the technology that that was proposed to find the AI data centers, because they have a significant heat signature. You know, hopefully they won't target a co-location that has non-AI activity, which is oftentimes the case. That's where, you know, the large data centers are that are outsourced. All right. Let's see if we've got anything. Oh, Adobe Acrobat. You're all familiar with that for PDFs, right? They've launched a groundbreaking AI assistant in its Reader and Acrobat applications, bringing conversational AI to the vast world of PDFs. This AI assistant can generate concise summaries of lengthy documents, provide insights, and answer questions through a conversational interface, and format information for sharing in emails, reports, and presentations. It's seamlessly integrated into the Reader and Acrobat workflows for immediate productivity gains. They say that this new feature, currently in beta, aims to revolutionize how users interact with, now get this, the trillions of PDFs by providing summaries. You know that this type of software has been around for decades, and I didn't realize there were that many out there. All right, I think we're coming to the close of our AI podcast. We appreciate everybody that joined us for joining, and we also appreciate those of you that are going to watch this podcast after it's been aired. That's where we get most of our views. Again, these are informational. They're designed to allow us to talk about what is looming and what is headed our way, and try to dispel some of the fears that are associated with this fourth industrial revolution, as it's been termed, and help us mitigate the transition, or the impact of the transition. I'm Pete Gruber. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.